All right, a fun topic today. Let's talk about the Soviet approach to fitness training. Well, actually, specifically to sports training, because there's really no concept of fitness in the Soviet Union. So I come from a small town in Siberia. Siberia is the Asian part of Russia, so definitely not from Moscow. And I grew up there and I moved to the United States in 1996. So I was in the Soviet Union, and then later, obviously, the Iron Curtain fell, and I lived in Russia for a while. And so I want to share with you the differences in the approach to what health, fitness, and sports training looks like in the Soviet Union. And of course, now it is completely different. Just want to, again, emphasize that because Russia is now a completely different place with completely different ways of doing things. Maybe not the sports training so much, but the ideas of fitness training and health have shifted to be more like the United States and other Western countries. But specifically, Soviet approach to sports training, I think remained the same, but I want to share with you my experiences and then definitely what I've noticed and what I've read about how to develop an athlete. So when I was in Russia, participating in sports as a recreational activity was not huge, was not a thing. It was like if you were chosen and if you were deemed to be talented, then you were included, then you were, added and coached, and somebody kind of oversaw your development. But if you were sort of didn't have prospects and they've looked at you, you didn't have the body for ballet, you didn't have the speed for soccer, whatever it was, right? Like your interest didn't matter as much as your body structure and your talents, your likelihood of success in the sport, right? So it wasn't like you could participate in recreational sports, but it was very clear that there will be no competitions. This is a rec league. Like that's not, it is like there was a clear distinction of sports for fun, for health purposes, to just keep it very light, keep it fun and healthy. And that means you're never taking it to that next level. You're never going above and beyond like we like to do here. Like even if you're a recreational athlete in the United States, we like to push it. Like I practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There are competitions for anyone who wants to enter, right? So it's just like a completely different approach to in Russia, in the Soviet Union specifically back then. It wasn't an option really for an adult to start training in a new sport. There was no one catered to adult development in sports. It was like you can participate in exercise for health. That made sense. But then if you're participating in sports with the goal of performance, well, you're too old for that. That's not a thing. Like I can't help you. So I started ballet when I was 22 because it's something I've always freaking wanted to do. And I had a really bad experience when I was in the Soviet Union and I tried doing ballet and they actually beat you when you didn't get it right. Like I was like my first day there and I got hit in the class in front of all the kids. And I was like, got shamed for having the wrong uniform. And it was like the worst experience ever. But it was like, they were looking at my 8-year-old body and looking at me as like, does she have what it takes to be a ballerina professionally? And I was like, I've always wanted to learn ballet. So it was like, one and done. I think I came back once more, but that was awful. But then I've always wanted to do it. And then being in America allowed me to explore all my options and try all the sports. And I wanted to do ballet. And I found a place that taught adult ballet when I was 22 and I was an adult. And they were actually nice enough to also let me practice with the kids who were just learning ballet because I wanted to get more exposure to it. But it was definitely a different experience. No one beat me when I got those steps wrong. But I did get the experience of learning something as an adult here. And that was something that, allowed me to then learn how to learn, especially with my adult brain, because the Soviet Union method of education was really focused on how do kids learn and getting the kids to a certain level of performance and athleticism. And then like as adults, it's like, well, you are what you are, and you don't have a way to excel in something that you have chosen. So definitely a missing piece for me. And that took a lot of like mind shifting for me to even accept that as an adult, I can learn new things. I can learn new sports, and I can actually reach a certain level of performance in those sports. It is, again, completely foreign concept in the Soviet method. Now, what is it that they did well? Because clearly, like we've seen, okay, let's leave the drug cycling aside. You know, everybody watched the movie Icarus. I direct you to that. But they did have success in performance in the sports regardless, because there was a depth in the team, and there was a certain level of all athletes that they brought up all the athletes to. So another contrast between the Soviet Union and what I see in the United States is obviously there is a concept of like you've selected the sport on your own because you're interested, and you become a sort of star in the United States. Like you become an athlete because you wanted to become an athlete, because you fought all the odds and you know, excelled in the thing, and then you are a star. And it's not necessarily that there is a depth of performance in the team, it's that we have an individual star on the team. Versus in the Soviet Union, you're looking to build the depth of the team so everybody reaches a certain minimum level of performance to be on that team. And then like they grow from there. And there's going to be like star performers, of course, like people are always going to, you know, especially at the very highest level, like there's going to be those small differences. But the whole team is already good. So you'll notice too, like in competitions, the Russian Soviet athletes, like they're winning silvers and bronzes because they're all like, whoever you put in there, like they're going to be good. But then the United States is winning the golds because they are the stars. You know, I'll leave that there, but I really do think that is part of the way that the athletes are brought up to like really go to that next level. And it's a lot of it to me starts with like, well, I want to be doing this. I chose the sport, and I'm going to excel against all odds in this sport, which is I think the American mindset. So anyway, one thing that is really important, and I think we can learn from the Soviet approach to sports, fitness, etc., is that the very first thing that they do is bring up your general level of fitness and preparation. So before, like whatever sport you are chosen for, you know, like in the Soviet Union, you say you want to do wrestling, say you want to do, you know, ballet is not a sport, but say you want to do gymnastics, whatever the sport is, figure skating, right? Like the first goal is to bring up the athleticism of the kid. So to spend time not learning technique in the chosen sport, but specifically bringing up their general fitness levels, getting them to be athletic. So they're able to have that body coordination that can translate into technique later on. That is so important. That's something that I've seen. I've coached youth sports in the United States. I've coached wrestling. I've coached tennis. And like a bunch of other, I've coached like some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, of course. Running, I coached track and field and hurdling in a high school. So like I've had exposure to how youth sports are treated in the United States, and it's definitely focused on building skills in the sport that we're doing. And that might make sense because we're here, we signed up for track and field. So we, you know, this kid wants to hurdle, that's what we're going to do. We're going to hurdle, and we're going to learn to, you know, like that makes sense. But in the Soviet Union, the focus was, you know, everybody plays sports for fun. So like to warm up for wrestling, you are going to play some soccer. And it's like something like you are exposed to sports here in PE class. Like when you go to high school in America, like you're doing constantly different sports throughout the year as part of your physical education. That's exactly what was done too for the kids trying to in a league for various sports. So whether it's weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting, whether it's wrestling, whether it's gymnastics, they were exposed to that general fitness, general physical education. And that included push-ups and pull-ups and all of those like calisthenic type exercises, but also like just having fun playing a sport, because that got the kids coordinated. And so once they build that level of athleticism, everywhere I've seen in like reading about it and kind of hearing various stories in the Soviet Union, they would take the kids to start learning technique and really focusing on technique starting around the ages of 10 to 12. So there's no concept of having a 6-year-old be a star wrestler like we do here. Like we have kids competing in wrestling or whatever other sports, like super young, like they first started and all of a sudden they're competing and winning and then like burning out. Like that I've heard about so much. The goal of Soviet Soviet sports education specifically is like we build a baseline of athleticism. Then starting 10, 12, we start learning techniques. The competitions start, but very slowly, because the goal is to build the athlete to be an 18-year-old athlete who is not burned out, and then they can be sent to those international competitions and be winning medals. Like they have such a long game in developing the athletes that the competitions were not introduced until much later in order to not burn out the kid. So, they were really thinking about preventing injuries, making sure there's overall physical development, and the kids were ready to then participate in more specific niche techniques that came later. And then competitions. And then competitions, like it's a given that if you're going to go the distance, you are more prone to getting injured. There could be freak accidents. There could be, acute injuries that happen when you are participating in the sport because you're going all out. So they weren't doing that until much later. So then you were having a much deeper team because everybody was brought up the same way and they all had this exposure to various sports and they were less likely to be injured and burned out. And so they all were having a pretty high level. And that was the team. Like the team dynamic was this. So the specialization came much later. And the whole point of me saying this for us, like what do we care about how the Soviets did it, is because when we start performing any sort of physical activity, are we starting from a place of general fitness and physical education and preparedness? Like, are we already up to a certain level of athleticism to then go all out in a specific sport and go compete? So this is where I see injuries happen. And I speak as an adult who started a variety of sports as an adult. So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu being one, I started at the age of 30. But it was like, that's where it's like very tricky because you want to get in shape. And you know that to get in shape, you need to put in some work. I mean, that's like some serious work. And then you join Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which I think is a great idea. Definitely a fan, definitely recommend. But if you kind of don't build into it with a supporting structure of general physical education, you might get injured much sooner because there's certain gaps in the way your body moves or in your muscle preparedness and strength that ultimately leads to injury. So having a baseline of strength, a foundation of physical fitness and athleticism is really helpful before we go all out, before we go super intense. So kind of having a way to build up to that is a great way to then ensure longevity in the sport of your choice. So it's super exciting to start, I want to start kickboxing, but when you start kickboxing, do you also have a strength training program that supports your new endeavor? That is what I'm all about. So building that foundation of strength, I prefer kettlebells, but there's like a variety of ways to build up your strength levels and just build that general athleticism. And I'm not saying wait. Definitely not saying this. Please don't misunderstand. I'm not saying wait to start your sport until you have built up your strength or athleticism, right? Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. Don't wait to start Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu if you want to start Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Don't wait to start rock climbing, or don't wait to start participating in a rec league for football. Like, don't wait. But my suggestion is definitely make sure that you are supporting that endeavor with a strength training routine that's actually making you better and making your joints stronger, making your muscles be ready for what you are asking them to do in this new intense activity that you're participating in. I think that's really key. So that's my takeaway from the Soviet approach to building up performance athletes. Like, we as adults want some excitement in our lives. Like, you have your regular job, but then you also want to participate in something fun like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or like any other sport, that I'm not thinking about. You deserve that. Like, other countries, it's kind of like not an option. Here we have this awesome option to participate in sports as adults, and we can learn like any new thing, any new activity as adults. It's amazing. But don't skip the step of general fitness, general level of preparedness, where you have a baseline of strength conditioning that will then take you and put money in the bank for you as you then ask a lot of your body in the specialization of the sport that you've chosen. And then, like, when you're looking for performance, that's going to take you to an intense level. It's going to take a lot out of you. It's going to impact your joints. It's going to strain your muscles. That's what it takes to be good and to perform and to compete. We know that. But for that to happen, let's establish a level of general foundational strength that will prevent so many injuries, and then will ensure that when you are done with the sport, you're still super active, and you're not just walking away with an injury. You're actually walking away with a level of athleticism of you had fun with it. You don't regret sort of, it's like, oh, I'm getting too old for this. Like, that won't happen. You won't feel like you're too old for it if you support your body with a foundation of strength conditioning, mobility, stability, alignment, all of those things, everything that I talk about in my program, the Reset, Rebuild, Return program. So anyway, definitely consider revisiting foundational general strength and preparation for performance in sports that you have fun doing.